وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد. اللهم صل وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الأولين، اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الآخرين، اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الملأ الأعلى. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل وعجل فرجهم. Inshallah, first and foremost, as we conclude our time together, the discussion tonight that we've chosen to delve into is a discussion that wants to highlight a particular personality and the importance of the stories that surround her. This personality, when it comes towards discussing the issues and the occurrences within the story and the events of Karbala, that this lady is known to not have been there in person, but rather have such an influential factor of the occurrences that were there within Karbala. Now, this personality that we're going to discuss tonight is none other than the mother of Abbas, known as Al-Baneen, or Fatima bint Huzam al-Kulabiyya. The discussion concerning her is important for various factors, because when we delve into the life of Al-Baneen, you'll see many of us will have counted on one hand the amount of stories that we've heard repetitively about her. But how much have we contemplated upon these stories? Amongst the stories is we hear that Amir al-Mu'mineen asks his brother Aqil to find him someone in order for him to marry. You'll find a discussion about Al-Baneen as an example, or amongst the traditions that are there, that when Imam Al-Hassan or Hussain would enter a room, when Al-Baneen is pregnant with Al-Abbas, they would say it's as if there is a jolt that tells Al-Baneen to stand up when the two Imams would come within the premise. You'll find a discussion surrounding Al-Baneen speaking towards Aba Fadl al-Abbas, telling him as an aspect of how to show your allegiance to your Imam, that do not call him brother, but rather call him master. And that's why in the traditions we have Aba Fadl al-Abbas never mentioned towards when calling upon Imam al-Hussein as my brother Hussein, before the occurrences and the events that happened within the land of Karbala, where in traditions it could have been once that he called him when he fell, or there was another recording that he said to him on the seventh night, my brother Hussein. So before Karbala never was mentioned in the traditions, always Mawla. In Karbala, either once or twice he called Imam al-Hussein with the word brother. And obviously this tradition that we have, when Imam Sajjad comes back with the caravan to Medina, the discussion is when Al-Baneen begins to ask Bishr ibn Hadlam what occurred about the events and the tragedies in Karbala. So besides these, maybe an extra 2-3 traditions that we have from Al-Baneen, we begin to discuss them, but that's what we know about her. But however, we still find her at such a high level, a high rank, a figure of significant importance. Now, when discussing this faculty, sometimes we need to look between the lines of the life of al-Baneen to unravel some jewels that are there that we need to better understand and have a better connection with Abu Fadl Abbas, and a deeper, more appreciation between this love, let's say, persona that she offloaded towards her sons in Karbala. Now, amongst the things that we can discuss, that all we have to do is open the history books and do a few calculations, is seeing the influential factor and the importance of how Sayyidah Zainab and al-Baneen were close. How? al-Baneen, as we understand, dies 64 years after Hijrah. And we also understand that the tragedies of Karbala occurred in which year after Hijrah? 61. So she, in traditions, and an average time frame of 3 years that she lived for after Karbala. Now, if we were to take that into perspective and we go back towards the books of history and we see that when was Baneen born, and what does that tell her about, or what does that tell us about her life and her connection with the children of Amir al-Mu'mineen? The first tradition comes forward and says that Baneen could have possibly been born 5 years before Hijrah, or could have been 5 years after Hijrah. Now, if we take into the perspective that Baneen was married at an age of 19, the understanding now is if she was 5 years before Hijrah and she was 19 years of age, therefore she would have been married 12 years after Hijrah, which would be 1 year after Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra would have passed away. But Abu Fadl Abbas, being the eldest son in Karbala, how old was Abu Fadl Abbas? In traditions that we have, Abu Fadl Abbas could have been around the age of 34 years. Now, Abu Fadl Abbas, 34 years within Karbala, if you were to calculate it, that means he was born 27 years, roughly, after Hijrah. Now, if Sayyidah al-Baneen, if we take the 5 years before Hijrah, and she was married 12 years after Hijrah, Abbas is born on the 27th year after Hijrah, there's a period of 15 years that Baneen is with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, and there's no children there. Now, it could be a miracle in the sense that after 15 years of age, then Allah gifts her 4 children, not just 1. Or if we take the second tradition, meaning she was born 5 years after Hijrah, all of a sudden it changes because you're adding 10 years instead of 12 after Hijrah. It becomes how much? 12 plus 10? Alright. So 22 years after Hijrah. In this perspective, there's a shorter time frame between her marriage and the birth of Abu Fadl Abbas, isn't it? Big difference. But there's also a beauty in it now. If we were to take the second, which they lean towards as historians, that she was born 5 years after Hijrah and she was 19 when she was married, the significance when we look at the beauty of it is that there was another personality that was born 5 years after Hijrah in the household of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who was it? Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam. Now, when you take into the perspective that Sayyidah Zainab was a very close age to Baneen, if we take the same year, when Abbas is born, and I want you to keep very, very close the aspect of beauty in the Arab tradition, when your eldest is born, if you have a daughter in the house or a new one, usually who is the one that raises them? So now all of a sudden when Abbas is born and we read the traditions in the books, that all of a sudden the heart of Zainab attaches to the love of this young Abbas, and she says, "Oh Father Ali, why is it do I find myself attached in this manner to this young newborn?" And he says to her famously, "Then let your heart be attached, because he will be your guardian and you will live with him, but you will not return with him." And she says to him, "Oh Father, will he leave me or will I leave him?" And he says to her, "You will leave him on the Euphrates River." But now all of a sudden, once we've understood that Zainab, same age as al-Baneen, Zainab is now all of a sudden a different perspective in Karbala. Why? Because when you go towards the traditions discussing the life of Abu Fadl al-Abbas with Sayyida Zainab, you'll begin to see between the lines that are written there that Abbas wasn't looking at Zainab just as a sister, but rather he was looking at Sayyida Zainab as a motherly figure, because she was also responsible for raising the personality which was Abbas. So now all of a sudden, just by looking within the books of history, we can derive another level of a connection which strengthens the understanding of how Abbas viewed Zainab and how Zainab indeed viewed Abu Fadl al-Abbas. That bond, all of a sudden we have a deeper understanding of it. And you'll see there is more of secrets that are there waiting for us when we delve into the life of al-Baneen. As we understand it, when delving into the life of al-Baneen, we understand that amongst the first things that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen would say towards Aqil in our traditions, "O Aqil, find me a lady that the honorable, brave, Fursan, let's say a knight, a person of honor, of valor, of strength, especially on that reference of a battlefield, that I want a lady that this genealogy has given birth to." And Aqil goes and finds him. He says, "Where are you from?" Fatima bint Huzam al-Kilabiyya. The discussion tonight that we want to gain an understanding of the importance and the significance of this great lady, and to use her as a guideline for us of how to best serve the Imam of our time. Because if we were to take, say, the al-Baneen to be the pinnacle of servitude towards Imam al-Hussain, what can we learn from her life in order for us to apply it to the Imam of our time if we want to achieve that level of understanding and servitude? So the first question we want to ask ourselves from tonight is, when discussing this lesson, many of us would have, without a shadow of doubt, thought to ourselves, Amir al-Mu'mineen, we understand he is a man of knowledge, but why would he go towards his brother in the idea and the understanding to assist him with helping him find a spouse? Number one. Number two is, when discussing the terminology that he used to Aqil to ask him to find him a lady, what can we derive from this statement? And what can we understand when there is in the future, whether it's our children or our grandchildren, or if the youth are listening, we have to keep in mind when selecting a spouse? What can we learn from this phrase? And what are the misconceptions that are there? And number three, and finally, what words within the statement of Amir al-Mu'mineen is pivotal to understand the path of servitude that Amir al-Mu'mineen placed in front of al-Baneen and indeed Abu Fadl al-Abbas, and what can we learn from that word that is utilized within that quote or word of eloquence of Amir al-Mu'mineen? So inshallah, assist me in trying to delve into this tradition of Amir al-Mu'mineen about al-Baneen, that we can best understand and follow in the footsteps of servitude. Please assist me in blessing the majlis and illuminating our hearts and minds with 3 recitations of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Many of us would have surely come across the tradition when it's mentioned that why would Amir al-Mu'mineen, with all the knowledge that he has, ask Aqil? Because if we delve into the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, many a tradition tells us of the level of his knowledge. Amongst the levels that we have, he says, علمني رسول الله ألف باب من العلم يفتح من كل باب ألف باب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the knowledge he's bestowed upon Rasulullah has taught me 1,000 doors of knowledge, and from each door opens for me another 1,000 more. One tradition showing you the level of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Another would come forward and say that the Prophet is the city of knowledge and I am its gates. And he says if you want to attain the city of knowledge, that you should enter it from its door, from its gate. Ahsant. Rasul would say, أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها فمن أراد المدينة والحكمة فليأتها من بابها. 2. We have traditions that say the level of understanding and comprehension that Amir has, that no one would know it, where Rasulullah would state very clearly, "O Ali, no one knows you except Allah and me." So who is Ali? What's his knowledge? He says himself, "Saluni qabla an tafquduni." Ask me before you lose me. فوالله إني أعرف بطرق السماء. I know more the paths of the skies than I do about these paths of this earth. So what kind of paths are the paths of the skies? Allahu A'lam. Knowledge, he has it. So much so that the knowledge that he's bestowed upon others, I want you to read between the lines. They would say there's a personality, companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This personality's name is Rushayd al-Hajari. Now whoever doesn't know about Rushayd needs to understand the position that he had in closeness to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rushayd al-Hajari is also given a title of Rushayd al-Manaya wal-Balaya. Amir entrusted a certain knowledge to Rushayd that he would know how a person's life ends. So a person comes and says, what did Amir al-Mu'mineen tell you about how the way that I will die? They'll tell him this is the way that you will die. Oh, what did Amir al-Mu'mineen say about this person? This is the way that he will die. And that's why when we have you go towards Nafas al-Mahmum, Abbas al-Qummi, the Shaykh writes about a particular moment in the lives of both Habib ibn Mudahir and Maytham al-Tammar. In Kufa, Shaykh Abbas al-Qummi narrates that in Kufa these two were both on horses. We said Maytham al-Tammar, and who was the other person? Habib ibn Mudahir. Making sure everyone's listening. They would be on their horses and they came close towards one another. The tradition say until their horses' necks became entangled. That's how close they were speaking. One looks at the other. Habib looks at Maytham, he says, it's as if I see a red-faced man that will go out and defend the Imam of his time and his master, and he will be hung on the gallows and his stomach will be pieced in defense because of his defiance for those that speak out against his master. Maytham looks at Habib, he says, it's as if I see a man with two tresses, or the fire they would say, like two long hairs that he used to braid. Habib had long hair and he used to tie it and it used to come down. He says, as if I see a man that has two of these tresses that will go out in support of the Imam of his time, and he will be martyred defending him. So the people in Kufa are listening to these two have this discussion. So as they dispersed, the people in Kufa would say, Ma akdhaba haula. How much do these guys fib that you think you know about this person, you know about that person? How are you going to be hung on the gallows? How are you? So the person that everyone knows all of a sudden arrives. He's asking, have you seen my friends? Who are your friends? Habib and Maytham. They would say they were just here. But why are you trying to go towards them? We've never seen anyone speak ill and lie like they've just did. He said, what did they say? So they relay the story. Rushayd could have easily said, no, that's completely wrong. You know what he says? He says, may Allah bless them, for they have said the truth. However, Maytham did an injustice because he forgot to mention something. He says, what's that he forgot to mention? He says he forgot to mention that the person that brings back the head of Habib will be given extra money because of the way that he tied it to the horse. So as we know, everyone, when they were returned back from Karbala, they would have their heads on the spears. Amongst the heads that were not on the spears was the head of Habib. What they did to the head of Habib is, because he had the two long braids of hair, they would tie both of his hair, or his strands of hair, to that of the horse that that person was riding, so much so that whenever the horse would walk, its knees would hit the head of Habib ibn Mudahar. Because that rider was trying to ridicule, he was given extra money. Rushayd, what has Amir Mu'minin told you about the way that you pass? He says, if you want to talk about me, because who's captured him? Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad captures him. He says, I want to make a liar out of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, tell me, how did Amir say that you will die? He says, Amir has told me that you will be the one that kills me. How? He says that Amir told me you'll cut off my limbs, my hands, my feet, and you'll cut off my tongue. Because of the bleeding, I will pass. So Ibn Ziyad said, I'm going to make a liar out of Ali. I'm going to cut your hands, and I'm going to cut your feet. I'm going to leave your tongue, so that you can tell everyone that Ali ibn Abi Talib lied, and you didn't die the way that he told you or foretold that you will die. So I want you to imagine that scenario right now. His daughter's narrating the tradition. She would say, as I'm holding the limbs of my father Rushayd, and he's been carried out because he doesn't have legs or hands. As I'm carrying the limbs of my father, she says, I asked him, Father, ma ashaddu ijtihadak, this struggle of yours, coming from the root word of jihad, ijtihad, of yours, how great is it in the eyes of Allah? Look at the reply of Rushayd. He says, Ya bunay, or Ya binti, do you think that this is an ijtihad? Sayati zamanon unasun basairuhum fi dinihim ashaddu min ijtihadina hada. There will come a time, at the end of time, where the people's foresight, or to be able to have foresight in your religion, will be more strenuous and more of a struggle than this ijtihad of mine. He's just had his limbs cut off. So how much is it a struggle for us, you and I, if we were to discuss this to be the end of time, of difficulty that is there for us to see right from wrong. That same Amir al-Mu'mineen that would have knowledge of his own death, the 19th of Ramadan, he would look at the sky. If we take the tradition of Sayyidah Zainab or Kulthum, that night he looks to the sky. What does he say? Hiya hiya wallah al-layl alladhi wa'adani iyaha Rasulullah, or alladhi wa'adani biha Rasulullah. This is by Allah the night that Rasulullah foretold for me. What's the night? This is the last night in this world before I am struck. What did he see? Stars, movements. How many veils was uncovered to him that he saw something? Knowledge without a shadow of doubt he has. But then what's the question that arises? Why would Amir al-Mu'mineen, with this type of knowledge that is bestowed upon him, go towards Aqil, say, Oh Aqil, find me? Why? The ulama come forward and say there's two reasons. The one I want to discuss tonight is the fact that Amir al-Mu'mineen is trying to tell us, if there is any faculty within your life, that always refer to the experts in the matter. Amir Kabir said, I know this for a fact. But there's an importance to refer back towards the experts, lest you fall into injustice or oppression or a trap or whatever have you. Many of us now, as an example, Al-amthal tudrab wa la tuqas. If I give an example, sometimes it becomes closer from one angle, from another angle it becomes more distant. Take an example, what's happening around the world. How many millions of people are writing about the matter? Millions of people. People that have knowledge, people that don't have any knowledge, people that are on a bandwagon, people that have no idea what a bandwagon is, but they repost and repost because something alludes to them very nicely. So you'll see all of a sudden, then what do I follow? Do I follow a person that has a sound argument and he has 20 followers? Or do I follow someone that said something that has 2 million followers? Where is the balance that I have? Do I look at that factor? Because many people look at that factor. They have 100,000, 200,000, 300 following. They could have bought followers for all we know, if we want to take that as a guideline. But But understanding is, do I follow them because I respect that other people like their content or follow them for whatever reason that they follow them? Not necessarily because they are the experts in the field. Or do I refer in accordance towards what Amir al-Mu'mineen is trying to teach me, towards experts in the matter? That is a very important and very dangerous thing that we have to delve into. Many people have a taste of a subject, just a taste. They haven't delved into the subject, but they refer that taste towards others. And people like the way that they speak, even as confusing as it is. Sometimes you say something, even though you may have knowledge, but the way that you say it misguides more than it guides. Refer back to the experts, people that have spent their entire life in servitude, entire life in bringing you the truth, entire life deciphering to show you how to find the truth, how to recognize falsehood. There's an importance there with the statement of Amir al-Mu'mineen to his brother Aqil. And that's one that we can delve into. The second reason is to see that any relationship that you choose to have within this world needs to have a purpose. Amir, when he says towards Aqil, he says, bring me a lady with these characteristics because I have a purpose. What's the purpose? I want her to bring forward to this world a son that will be a person Yansur Al-Hussain fi Karbala, that will support a brother in Karbala. Now, purpose. When you go towards the 4 different reasons that are mentioned within the books about why a person would go towards this faculty of marriage, as we understand all the traditions that come forward about the barakat and that reward that lies in front of you, the rewards that say you will finish half your religion, thulutha dinih in some tradition, 2/3 of your religion. They say that there are 4 main reasons why you would go towards a spouse or choose to get married. The first, the allocation of how my choice is made is firstly based purely on beauty. That person says that I want to get married to this person because of the beauty they possess, and that's all. They have to make a very differentiating factor between the only reason or amongst the reasons. It's not the fact that I say, no, you doesn't have to be a person that you are physically attracted to. No, that's not the case. The case is, he says, you only get married to someone purely because of their looks. 1. 2, purely because of the money that they have. 3, purely because of the position that they have and the respect or the name or the position within, whether it's a community or a company or a last name or whatever have you, a position. And finally, faith. The interesting factor here is Rasulullah would say, if you marry for beauty and beauty alone, only for beauty, that person will slowly diminish their beauty in your eyes. If you marry a person for wealth, that wealth will not have barakah. Only married just to make money. If you marry for position, that position will either be looked at to have a stain, or it would be removed, or would be looked down upon. Now, the final one, very interestingly, is if you marry for faith as the driving factor, that Allah will bestow upon you the other 3. Be very careful. Not saying that beauty isn't a factor, wealth isn't a factor, that position isn't a factor. They're all factors in various degrees. But the pure and only reason why, that's when it becomes problematic. A person that has faith, that has a good position, from a reputable family, that is also, you find, quite attractive, there's no problem there. No problem at all. But the pure and only reason, that's when it becomes problematic. Amir says very beautifully that the reason why is this: I want someone to support my Hussein in Karbala. But you have many sons. What made al-Banin special. Question. Safin, if we go to a tradition, Safin, Amir al-Mu'minin gives a flag towards one of his sons, known as Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, Ahsant, the son of Khawla, the lady that, long story short, when Khalid ibn al-Walid attacked Malik ibn al-Nuwayra and brought all those women and children captive, amongst them was a lady. When Amir al-Mu'minin would enter the room, he would say to everyone, why is it that you have been taken captive? The lady would stand up. She would say, because of our love for you, O Amir. That was Khawla, that Amir al-Mu'minin married, and the son that was there from that marriage was Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya. Now, this Muhammad's given a banner in Siffin. Amir says, go out on the battlefield. I need you to do ABC. Ibn al-Hanafiya would go out. They would say that the arrows would cover the sun, that it looked like darkness as he attacked. He would return. What happened? He says, O my father, O Ali ibn Abi Talib, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, when the sun was blocked, I feared for thou life and those that are with me, so I took a step back. Imam says this, he says, Fika irqun min ummik. You have a gene from your mother. The son of Ali and Fatima don't have that gene. Gives the flag to who? Imam al-Hassan, and he attains victory in that moment. So now you begin to see that genealogy plays a very important role, and that's why he says, oh Aqil, choose for me a woman that these qualities of forefathers gave birth to her. Speaking to the qualities of who? Abu Fadl al-Abbas when he comes. The choice is very important. It's not the fact of, oh, there's nasib, whenever nasib. No. It's not the fact of there is a one person that's written. Otherwise Rasulullah would not say, تَخَيَّرُوا لِنَطَفِكُمْ. Make a choice. Research. Go and do your due diligence to see whom you're marrying, whom you're accepting. You have a choice in the matter, a free will in the matter if you like. That's why he says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَخَضْرَاءُ الدُّمَنْ أو الدِّمَنْ. Be wary, or Rasulullah says, be wary of a beautiful plant in a bad environment. Meaning, a girl could have very good qualities, beautiful. You may think that she's righteous, but be wary. Doesn't say no. It says be wary if she is in a bad environment, because it affects. Just like the example that's given about a pure perfumer and a person that works with blacksmith. Even though they would say if a personality is good, but is around that which is bad. They give the example of a blacksmith. I'm not saying the blacksmith as a job is bad, but it's an example. The example is, if you have a friend that's a blacksmith, that you do not talk to them, you do not interact, you don't do business, all you're doing is walking with them to work and walking back. That's all you're doing. To give an example of being a good person around a particular environment. They would say, just walking with that blacksmith to their work and back, you may not see it, but there might be stains or dust or metal pieces that will be on your garments, on your face, behind your back. You may not be able to see it, but those around you will be able to. And true is the example of the opposite. If a person that you have close is a good environment like that of a perfumer, even though you will not be able to smell it, but those around you will smell your fragrance. So be careful, he says, be very wary. But now taking that as an example, we understand Amir al-Mu'mineen, there was a purpose. But what's the word that we need to utilize of importance? He says, I want him as a support for my son. And he uses the word, what? Yansur akhahu al-Hussain fi Karbala. Now if you look towards Karbala as its entirety, the good and the bad, as personalities, leave aside the aspect of good and evil right now. I want you to look at personalities, bravery, strength, swordmanship. Do you think Yazid would send anyone out to kill Imam al-Hussain, or people that he knew that were up to the task? people that were skilled in their swordsmanship, people that were skilled in their archery, people that were skilled. So there were, without a doubt, people that had particular qualities in Karbala. But the defining quality isn't the fact that Imam Amir al-Mu'minin says about Abbas, I want a person with a quality of bravery. I don't want a person of quality of swordsmanship. I don't want a person of quality of archery. He says there is a quality I want. Yes, their bravery is the utmost of importance because I want these characteristics to be in the genealogy of my son. But he says I also want the nusra, which is the ability to choose between good and evil. Yansur akha. And that's why when you look towards Karbala, how many times did Imam Hussain say the famous words? What were they? Ala min nasirin yansuruna. Is there no one that is able to see the difference between good and evil? Hurso. But it was a challenge for him, wasn't it? And then you have Abu Fadl al-Abbas, when they try to, as we know, Imam Hussain would have the flag bearer Abbas representing his entire army. Everyone fell. Abbas was by himself with the flag. He would say, you are my entire army. Only when he fell, they say, Al-an shamita bi aduwi. Now they mock me because my army fell. That's why when you go towards Karbala and you see that Shimr speaking to Abbas because of the relation of their forefathers, he would say, where is the son of our tribe? Abbas would not want to speak until Hussein would tell him, go. He would go with hesitation to see what Shimr would want. He says, I have for you the leadership of this army and you are guaranteed safety. Look at the words. Yansuruna, remember. Look at the words. He says, you give me safety because of my relation through my mother. What about the relation of Hussein and his mother? Now look at the understanding of presence, meaning when we really truly understand the reason of our existence, then you'll have peace within your heart. Look at the words. It says, أَأَتْرُكُ مَنْ خَلَقَنِي اللَّهُ لِأَجْلِهِ. Do I leave a man whom Allah has only created me for? That's why when you look at Imams tell us what in the traditions? That Allah have mercy on our uncle Abbas. Ahsant. He had a foresight. He knew exactly the truth and falsehood. He knew what the purpose of his existence was. He knew why his father Amir al-Mu'minin chose him for this particular task of what he would bring in support of his brother. And that's why Kadhim al-Uzari, if you go read his poetry and you begin to read the biographies of the different poets of the time and their connection with the Imam of the time and how they would either assist them in their poetry, correct their poetry, cry upon their poetry. Kadhim al-Uzari, one day he wrote lines. I want you to ponder over these lines. He says, one day I wrote the lines, وَيَوْمٌ أَبَا فَضْلٍ اسْتَجَارَ بِهِ الْهُدَى. In his poetry in Arabic he's saying, there was a day that Huda, Hidayah, the beacon of light, ark of salvation, guidance, is one of the names of Imam al-Hussain. He says the day that Abu Fadl, Huda, meaning Imam al-Hussain, looked towards him for help. You know when we say, Nastajiru billah, I seek refuge in Allah. The poet's saying that Hussein was seeking refuge in Abbas. He says, I wrote the lines. He says, I didn't sit comfortably with me. He says, I went and to bed, I went to sleep to ponder over it. Should I leave these lines? Should I remove these lines? Should I leave these lines? Should I remove these lines? And start again. So he says, that night, as I was thinking about yes, no, he says, Hussein comes to me in my dream. He says, Sheikh Kadham, I want to tell you about this line of yours. He says, what did you want to tell me? Because I'm very confused. Have I done an injustice? You're an imam, you're a ma'soom, you have a position. How can I say that you were looking towards someone for refuge, someone for help, when you are the main person that we all look towards? He says, know very well, Shaykh, in Karbala the following, that existence in itself needed me and I needed Abbas. He says, write it down. Do not rub it out. Don't rub it out. But where was these seeds of resistance, seeds of greatness, seeds of bravery, of differentiating between truth and falsehood? Who planted them? We go back towards one of those that helped water those plants, which was Al-Banin. I ask you a question. I want you to really contemplate over this. If I have something in my life that I want assistance with, something that nothing else is working, I need to have a nidhr. I want to ask Allah for something through a wasila, that if I do this and I gift it to someone, that, oh Allah, help me with this. I bring you two personalities. One of them is a personality that the Imams would refer to as a scholar that is modern day marja level. Habib ibn Mudahar. Imam Hussain testifies to his knowledge and his position, and we understand the connection that they have. So much so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, without a shadow of doubt, given him a position other than that of the rest of the companions. When you go towards Karbala, there is a grave for Habib and a grave for the rest of the companions. Now, if I was to tell you, Habib ibn Mudahar, I ask you that, do you want to gift that which you are performing to the reward of Habib and ask through him, or ask through Al-Banin? Who would you go through? Who would you go through? Question. 9 times out of 10, most people will say Al-Banin, that I will seek to get my hajat from Al-Banin, not through Habib. But hold on, all these merits of why do you choose Al-Banin? Very simply, Habib, with his devotion, with his knowledge, with his servitude, with his ability to differentiate right from wrong, without a doubt, great position. But it's only when he was called upon that he came to the assistance. He was ready. But when he's called upon, he comes and serves. So he had a life, he had a purpose. When the Imam calls, he comes. Al-Banin, I want to ask you, did she have a life except that she was rotating around Hussein or not? Her whole life rotates around Abu Abdullah. Habib's life doesn't rotate, even though he was a great companion and of the highest, that he has a shrine by himself, a grave by himself. Big difference. Big difference between the two. And that's why when you go to the traditions, you really see some things in your mind that you haven't contemplated over, because we haven't touched these. Amongst them, to show you this position, a newlywed, when you come towards your husband's house, you know, you have, I need this, I need this, I need this, put me in this place, I don't want this in. Al-Banin, when she comes and was taken by her father to the doorstep of Amir al-Mu'mineen, 19 years of age, she says, Father, leave me here, I have something to speak about with Ali before I enter. So Ali is at the door. He says, Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen. She says, Oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have something of a condition, and only one condition, before I step inside the house. But I want permission from you and the children of Zahra before I enter. What's the condition? You can imagine Hassan, Hussein, Zainab Kulthum would come. You accept, I will enter this house. You do not accept. I can't. What's the condition? Al-Bani, newlywed. Sometimes you have problems with children, you have problems with the husband, you have problems with other wives. Conditions. She says, no. The only reason I would enter this house is for one, is that you accept me not as a wife but as a servant. You accept me, I'll come. You don't accept me, Her name, Fatima. She says, do not call me Fatima, because when you do, I remember. I can see the memory in their eyes. It hurts the children. Call me Al-Baneen. Imam Sadiq, what would he say when he's asked about Al-Baneen? He says, may Allah have mercy on Al-Baneen, because she has lost 4 in Karbala, but she went blind crying for Hussein. Who knew? The last 3 years of her life, Al-Baneen was blind. How much did she mourn for Abu Abdullah? And that's why when we go towards the traditions, when remembering Al-Baneen, when the caravan returns, Sajjad is there, the caravan behind him. They made the trip from Karbala to Kufa to Sham back towards Karbala, and then from Karbala they returned towards Medina. But how would they come? What did they lose on the way? What calamities are they going to bring with them? What stories do they need to share? Look at the traditions that give us an indication of how much they've had enough of the people gazing upon them. Zainab would say to Sajjad, can you somehow deviate the lens of people, the eyes of people, the gaze of people away from us? We've had enough people looking at us. Enough of those eyes that have seen haram to look upon that which is the beauty of Allah. We've had enough of them. We don't want them to look towards the daughters of Rasulullah any longer. She would say, Sajjad, is there a way you can distract everyone so we can go towards our houses without people's gazes upon us? Sajjad goes inside Medina. He says, where is Bishr? Bishr comes. He says, Bishr, can you distract the people away, so much so that you take them away from the house so that we can, and the woman would enter the house without being seen. They're tired from the gazes of people, the gazes of Ibn Ziyad, the gazes upon those that were in Karbala, the gazes of Yazid and his henchmen, the gazes of the people within the streets, cursing them, throwing at them anything that they would find, abusing them, whipping them. They've had enough. Can you distract everyone? So Bishr would come, and therefore he would come to a moment where he brings everyone saying, Ya ahli Yathrib la maqama lakum biha. They say, what do you mean, Bishr? Why is it that we do not have a place left to stay within Medina? What's the problem? He would say, follow me to the grave of Rasulullah. I will tell you over there. The people would follow him. He's in the streets. Ya ahli Yathrib la maqama lakum biha. What's the problem? What's occurred, O Bishr? He would say, come. They would follow him. As they would follow him, all of a sudden, the ladies at the head was Zainab would enter the house without being seen. Kulthum would enter the house without being seen. Sukaina would enter the house without being seen. Everyone would go towards Bishr. There he would say the following lines, Ya ahla Yathrib la maqama lakum biha. What happened, Bishr? قتل الحسين فأدمعي مذرار. What happened, oh Bishr? He would say that Hussein has been killed and my tears will forever be pouring for him. فالجسم منه على الثرى مقطع. His body lays on Karbala in pieces. والرأس منه على القناة يدار. that his head has been placed on a spear, gifted from one person to another. Amongst the people that would ask questions, they would say, there was a lady amongst them, an elderly lady. She would come, oh man, what is this that you speak about? He would continue to say, قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنِ قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنِ, in the manner that he was killed. The lady would say, oh man, who has been killed? What's these words that you're saying? Who has died in Karbala? Bishr would ask, who is this lady? I'm saying Hussein has died. This lady continues to ask me. It's as if she does not believe that which I am saying. They would say, Bishr, that is Baneen. That's the mother of Abbas. Bishr, she's lost 4 boys in Karbala. He knew the boys. He would say slowly, I don't want to break the heart of Baneen. I want to slowly tell her about the tragedy that occurred in Karbala. He would say, عظم الله لك الأجر Baneen. With who? He would say with Ja'far. She would say that, oh man, I did not ask you about my son Ja'far. I am asking you about my son about Abdullah Al-Hussein. Tell me what happened. Is he alive? He would say again, he would tell her, oh Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر. With who this time? He would say, عظم الله لك الأجر, with Abdullah. She would again say, oh Bishr, I did not ask you about my second son Abdullah. I have asked you about my son Hussein. Bishr would continue, oh Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر. With who? He would already say Ja'far, Abdullah. In traditions, Aun or Uthman, she would say, عظم الله لك الأجر. Again she would say, Bishr, tell me, I am not asking you about my sons, may they all be sacrificed. I'm asking you about the master of this world, Sayyidi Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. My son, I'm asking you about Abu Abdullah. He would say, I knew the next one would hurt Baneen. The next one, she had a connection. Everyone knew this personality. Everyone loved this personality. They loved the moon of the Hashemites. So he says, I told her slowly, oh Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر. With who, oh Bishr? قمر بني هاشم أبا فضل العباس. What happened to him? He said he fell in Karbala. The traditions would say Baneen had a child on her shoulder. Upon hearing that Abbas fell, she falls to the ground as well. She says, Bishr, لقد قطعتني هذا قلبي, that you've just severed my heartstrings, oh Bishr. But still I ask you the most important question. Tell me about Abu Abdullah. He would say, Baneen, عظم الله لك الأجر بأبا عبد الله. They would say Baneen falls unconscious on towards the soil in Medina. When she regains consciousness, she runs towards the house of Imam Hussain to see who of the ladies survived. They would say that Zainab told someone at the door, do not allow anyone to enter that is not a companion for us in this tragedy. A lady comes towards the door of Zainab, knocks the door, a lady answers. She would say, oh lady, my mistress Zainab has said, no one's allowed unless you are a companion in this tragedy. Who shall I tell Zainab? Oh, lady is at the door. She would look at her, this lady, and say, tell Zainab, أمها على الباب, that her mother is at the door.
Lady goes inside. Zainab, my mistress Zainab, there's a lady at the door. She would say, who is the lady? She says, I don't know, but she's saying, tell Zainab that her mother is at the door. Zainab, what would she say? She would run towards the door. She would say, let the lady in. Al-Baneen enters. She sees Zainab. Zainab looks towards Al-Baneen. They race to meet one another until they embrace. They would cry and cry and fall upon the ground. Zainab would say towards Al-Baneen, Wa Kha, Wa Abbasa. Al-Baneen would say to Zainab, Wa Walada, Wa Hussaina. Tell me of the tragedies of Karbala. Did my son Abbas make me proud? She goes on to tell her. Al-Baneen scans the girls that are there. What does she say? She says, Zainab, where is Ruqayyah? Where are the daughters? Where is Asghar? Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. مأتم حسين. يا حسين